what are the lunar nodes? So lunar nodes, or nodes of the moon, you tend to hear them referred to in those two ways. As a shorthand, I'll probably just call them the nodes. Sometimes lunar nodes, if I remember. But there are two of them. But to really understand them, I think it's a little bit harder to conceptualize than the planets. You say, oh, I can look out at the sky, I can see with the telescope these different planets. There's nothing to see with the nodes because they're just a calculation. They're not a planet. They're in a chart considered a point within your chart. So the same as your ascendant, that's a line. That's the degree point that you would look at, but there's no ascendant floating around that you can see, and the lunar nodes are similar in that sense. So they're calculated by identifying the intersection between the orbit of the moon and then the orbit of the sun. So you're looking at that point between them where they connect, and there's two in each of their circles. So I don't have four hands, but so if one is moving this way, one's moving this way, it means that there's going to be 2 points where they're connected. So one is the north node and one is the south node. Ultimately, what happens with the lunar nodes is as they are moving through the sky, it's their calculated location as then relates to the different constellations, the different signs of the zodiac. So because they're always on opposite sides, they end up being like the wheel when we're looking at that in sister signs. So if you, as an example, are looking at your chart or any other chart, it's going to be the two that are directly across from each other. So there's something about them that's in common, and there's also something about them that is in oppositional in nature. So if you're looking at your chart and you're trying to find your north node and your south node, those are where the nodes were on the day that you were born. You're going to be looking for what looks like a horseshoe. So there's going to be the south node, which points down, and then the north node, which points up. So it's the closed part is how you're figuring out the direction. The north node represents purpose, direction in life, and then the south node represents past life, karma, things that you're maybe naturally good at or a bit of a comfort zone situation, or what you're being called to release. So what you're being called towards, what you're being called to release. They tend to be in that sister sign pairing, any given sister sign pairing, for around 1.5 years. Because again, the two ecliptics, they keep moving, they're shifting, they're adjusting, and then it takes X amount of time, all of a sudden they go into the next one. And another thing to pay attention to when you look at your chart, this is a common misunderstanding, is when you see those two symbols, they're always going to have a little R next to them, which normally in a chart indicates that a planet is retrograde, but the nodes are always retrograde in that they are always moving backwards through the zodiac. So as an example, the previous eclipse series that we were in was Aries and Libra, and then the current one that we're in is Pisces and Virgo. So that's us moving backwards. And then the next one goes to Aquarius and Leo, and so on and so forth. So now that we've covered what the lunar nodes are and how to find them in your chart, they are the foundational component of eclipses, which is why I'm discussing them and having this class now, because we are at this point definitely in the eclipse portal. I'm in the northern hemisphere, so for me, it's going to be my summer, fall, and that's going to be happening literally next week. We have our first eclipse. So there is an energy portal and orb around them. So we're definitely already in that. I noticed kind of a switch in the last several days. My dreams started changing and getting a lot more vivid, and that's pretty typical for me in the lead up to an eclipse season and then during that eclipse season as well. So what is an eclipse? We can start there. First off, it's either the moon being in the shadow of the earth or the earth being in the shadow of the moon. Now, this was interesting when I was researching it because I kind of had in my head, oh, well, the eclipses are about what the sun and the moon are doing. We have a lunar eclipse, we have a solar eclipse, that's moon and sun. But that's all created because the fact that we have earth and the shadows or the interplay, because we have to think about ourselves. Our viewpoint is from earth. So it's actually about what the earth and the moon are doing in relation to each other, in relation to the sun. So for lunar eclipses, that means that the Earth is sitting between the luminaries. So you have the sun, and you have the moon, and you have Earth that's in the middle. So the moon, let's just say the moon's over here, is in the shadow of the Earth. So the sun is casting its light and it's not reaching the moon because the Earth is significantly bigger, therefore it is in the shadows. So when the light refracts, it either is just dimming the moon because it's not getting the light that it should be, or it is shifting the color on it. This occurs at a full moon. So again, normally it would be illuminated, but now it's just the dial's been turned down or the color is sliding on the scale. And then in contrast, when you have the solar eclipse, that's when the moon is between the Earth and the sun. So the moon is much smaller. And so what it's doing is it's the sun's light is coming in, but it's just this tiny little dot. So it's as if there's like this little tiny, tiny shadow on the Earth's surface. And that's why it matters, especially when you have a total eclipse. You hear them talking about it on the news. Oh, like you're in the path of totality. It's because it's over just a specific surface area, and you really have to be in the right spot in order to experience the eclipse and be able to see it, whether partial or total. So because it's casting a shadow, how it presents to us is it looks like the moon is dark and then there's a light ring around it. And that's because the sun is farther away, but the sun is the light and then the moon is going in front of it. And those occur at a new moon. The reason that you have total eclipses versus partial eclipses has to do with the distance between the different celestial bodies. So again, that can vary. So you can have a total eclipse, and that's when you have that clean ring, or it could be partial, and you're mostly seeing it, and it's just like a little dot, or the reverse. So that has to do with the alignment. How far away are they in space from each other, plus their orientation to link paths. And so what I was learning when I was looking into this is that typically when you have the total eclipse, that has to do with the moon being at the closest possible point to the Earth at the time. So if the moon is farther away, then to us it looks smaller, and therefore more of the sun is able to peek out. So pretty straightforward from that sense. But yeah, there's so many different moving parts. You have calculations, you have all these things syncing up, and then it just creates this phenomenon. So it's pretty interesting, I thought, reading about it. Especially as intuitives, when there's a lot of energy that we could be picking up on for the collective, it can impact our energy levels, like physically, as in like our battery. Like we just start getting really tired, um, especially for full moons. Um, that's when energy is typically heightened, and we have that as an observed phenomena. Like animal activity changes, and that goes for eclipses as well, that it's like nature is responding and we are people, so we are part of nature as well, so we tend to have some sort of a reaction. I haven't been tracking my intuition with every single cycle because I only started, like, I had my spiritual awakening only a few cycles back. So I only have experienced one quadrant of the wheel. So I don't actually know what it's like to experience all the combinations. This is different than your natal placement. So my lunar nodes are not in Pisces and Virgo, but the collective energy is moving through those spaces, and therefore we as people are being drawn towards and away from those signs and the life areas that they are focused on. I think it depends. It depends on one, just your energy that day. But if you are especially intuitive or you're locked into what's happening with the eclipses or just the entire eclipse series, again, a whole year and a half, you want to think about which sign they're in, which sign that is in your chart, as in which house it corresponds to. Do you have any placements? And then just what your energy happens to be that day. So there's a few pieces that it could be picking up on. I saw lightning outside. We had the thunder going. So we're having a whole ambiance in the background here. I always encourage people, and what I try to do is just document as much as possible, and then you can look back at it because You never know. And when you have an entire year and a half period of time, again, this cycle, which I'm going to get into to really map the whole thing out, we're in a very unusual time because the current cycle with Pisces and Virgo, plus the next one coming after that, they're both extended but shortened but blurred together. So we're in this really weird in between time. So many rumbles. We're in this unusual time where we're kind of getting, at a certain point, we're going to be getting all four of them just blended with each other. So it's going to be as if we are having eclipses, because we are, in four different houses, or up, could be more than that depending on where they're falling for you, but at minimum, four different houses and four different signs over the course of the next few years. So there's a lot that's going to be picked up for us, not even just in this cycle, but over the course of the year and a half, we're going to be having a bunch of out of sign eclipses. So for the current eclipse series, I've already mentioned that we are in a North Node Pisces, South Node Virgo series. However, the first North Node Pisces eclipse was actually September 17th, 2024, and that's because it was an out of sign eclipse. So back then, we were still in the Aries and Libra series, but the North Node kind of, again, it's with the calculation. It happened to move just enough that it was out of sign. And this is going to be happening a ton in the current series. It didn't really happen in the last one, except right at the end there. But this series, it's going to be doing that on a pretty regular basis. The 11th of January, so 1/11, 2025, is when we had the North Node actually and officially entering Pisces. So again, that was like a little dip that we had around that eclipse. But then in January of 2025, pretty much right at the start of this new year, is when the nodes officially changed into the Pisces-Virgo axis. We still had an Aries eclipse left to go. So that cycle wasn't done. The Libra Aries cycle was not finished because in March of 2025, this year, we had a Virgo eclipse and we had an Aries eclipse. And then it was officially done. So we had this bit of an overlap. September 2024, we had one in, one out. And then March of 2025, we also had one in, one out. So oh, the rain is starting to come in. Hold that thought. I'm like, my table is getting wet. Okay. The eclipses that are happening in just a matter of weeks in September are the only time in this eclipse series when we're going to have one Virgo and one Pisces eclipse. All of the others, we're going to have an out of sign. And this is what I was alluding to before, that we have this pattern happening. So I'm going to start going through the dates, and reminder, I'm going to have on my blog post a little table that's going to walk through all these. If you want to jot them down while I'm going through, you can, but you can also look out for that, which will be out in the next few days. Ooh, flash of lightning. Okay, so that first date, oh my gosh, that was huge thunder. Okay, so first date, September 17, 2024. North Node dipped into Pisces. This was an out of cycle eclipse. Then we had October 2nd, which was still on the old cycle. That was Libra South Node. That was the final Libra South Node eclipse. That one ended. Next, we had March 14th, which was the first Virgo eclipse. So now we would have had one in each sign for the new series. And then we had the final North Node Aries eclipse, which was on March 29th of this year. The North Node Pisces eclipse, which is happening on September 7th. And then on the 21st, we have the South Node Virgo eclipse. So we're going to have Pisces, then we're going to have Virgo. And then the very first eclipse in 2026 is going to be another out of sign one. And it's going to be on February 17th in Aquarius. So the North Node is supposed to be in Pisces, but we're going to have an out of sign. After only two Pisces eclipses, we're going to have an out of sign in Aquarius. And this is something really significant to note, that really in this eclipse series, even though the North Node is in Pisces, it's kind of getting the short end of the stick because a decent number of what's supposed to be Pisces eclipses become Aquarius eclipses. So the ones that we have are kind of precious because there's so few of them and less than are in a normal series. So the winter, what will be winter eclipses next year for the Northern Hemisphere, February 17th, 2026, North Node Aquarius, March 3rd, South Node in Virgo. And then we're going to be having our eclipses moving into August. So we are having a transition and a shift, and that's part of why they end up being in these different signs, because they're starting to shift around the calendar. So in 2026, we're going to have an out of sign, this time in Leo eclipse, South Node on August 12th, 2026. And then a couple weeks later, August 28th, oh my gosh, it is a torrential downpour. Oh, this is so funny. Okay. So on August 28th, 2026, we will have the final Pisces North Node eclipse. So again, let's count it. We had one out of sign in 2024. We had one in sign, which is in a week. And then we only have one more. And that is going to be in August of next year. So almost exactly a year from today, we're going to have a Pisces eclipse. And that's it. So there's only two that are in cycle and then one that we had early that was out of cycle. That's all we get for Pisces. So these eclipses are going to be ones to especially note because really we should have been having, two a year for a year and a half, have like 6 of them. We're not getting that with Pisces. We're only getting 3, and one of them was an out of sign. So all we have left is the one next week and then one an entire year from now. And we're going to have these yearly check-ins because it was mid-September and then it's early September and then it's late August. And those are when the 3 Pisces eclipses are, like right around the same time, each a year apart, 3 different years. February 5th, 2027 will be Aquarius, and that will be our second Aquarius eclipse that's out of sign. So again, both of those should have been Pisces. We should have had 2 additional Pisces eclipses, but they're both in Aquarius. And then this cycle officially ends on February 20th, 2027, when we have the final South Node Virgo eclipse. So the full timeline is September 17th, but technically it started March 14th of this year. But September 17th, 2024 to February 20th, 2027. That's our year and a half period of time for this cycle. If you want to attend, we'll be meeting and doing meditation and journaling practice, harnessing that eclipse energy literally as it is happening. So the class will start right before the eclipse goes exact. And then I'm doing the same exact thing a couple weeks later on the Virgo eclipse. So I'll have my part 2 class on September 17th. And then a few days later, on the 21st, we'll have that Virgo eclipse meditation journaling class. Those will be the opportunities to hear more in depth about these 2 eclipses. It sounds like hail. Oh, there's hail. Oh my gosh, I'm looking at it outside. There's hail. They're all like this big. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna show out the window so y'all can see. Good thing I'm finishing the class because I don't think y'all will be able to hear me.